Hi kiddos, so this is your video for Wednesday's lesson. So today we are doing only 2 steps because it is a Wednesday, and remember Wednesdays are short. So step 1 is this Edpuzzle video. Step 2 is an activity as always, but it's going to be a little different today. You're going to open up a practice sheet. This is on Google Classroom. And you're going to complete it on loose leaf, so on separate paper. Then what you're going to do is you're going to take a picture of your assignment and submit it. All right, so that's what you're going to do after the video. All right, so what are we doing? Let's go over this first. So we're still graphing a systems of equations, right? But today's a little different because you're going to notice that I need to check to make sure my equation is in slope-intercept form. All right, if it is, I can skip this step. If not, then I need to isolate for y. So that's going to be the new thing that we're learning. This is our new skill. Everything else is still the same. All right, so slope-intercept form looks like this. That means y is isolated by itself. We have an equal sign, and then I have my slope and my y-intercept. Okay, so if I notice in this first equation, that is not the case. I see that y and x are on the same side. So we need to change that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up my solving square. On my solving square, now what I'm going to put is y on left side, and everything else is going to go on my right side. Okay, so look at the top. I see this is a 5y. That's going to go on my y side. Now everything else, 20 gets brought down. 2x is going to cross over. And remember what we say, when you cross the line, you have to change the sign. So I'm going to make this a negative 2x. Now I'm going to bring this down. So I get 5y. Then I'm also going to bring this down. These are not like terms, so I cannot combine them. So it looks like this, 20 minus 2x. Now, so far my steps are just like solving for x, which we did last unit. So what is my last step when I solve for x? How do I get rid of this number in front? I'm going to divide it. But when I divide it, what you're going to notice, see here, I'm going to divide it to every single term. That's the only thing that's a little different. So now my y's cancel out, the 5's cancel out, and I'm left with y equals, I calculate this, 20 divided by 5 is 4. 2 divided by 5 gets me a decimal, so like I've taught you before, we're just going to leave it as the fraction. Okay? So that's how we isolate. For my equation 2, is this in slope-intercept form? It is. If I notice, it's already y by itself. So, it's already isolated. So I'm just going to go ahead and we skip this step. And we just write y equals negative 2x minus 4. Okay? So now we can move to the next part. Identifying my slope and my y-intercept. Remember, slope, like I wrote up here, goes next to the x. Let me get a different color. So in this case, what's next to my x is here, what's next to my x is here. Even if it's rearranged differently, that's okay. All right, my slope is always next to my x. So my slope, or my m in this case, is negative 2 over 5. And my slope in this one is negative 2. All right, moving right along. Y-intercept is 4. That's the number by itself. And my y-intercept here is negative 4. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to pause and we're going to graph on Desmos. okay? And what am I graphing? I'm graphing my two equations that we isolated, not my originals. That's the important part that's different. This is what I'm graphing on Desmos. All right, so let's go ahead and pause and do that. Okay, so I typed in my two equations that we had on the last page, as you can see. One thing I want to note, because this was a mistake we often saw, when you are typing in your fraction and then you're typing in your x, you want to make sure your x doesn't go down here. That's not right. I get this crazy picture. So what I have to make sure to do is I make sure to hit the arrow and then type my x, and then I see that it's next to it. All right, so here is my graph, and I see my solution right there. So what I'm going to do is on my next page, on my homework page, I'm going to sketch that. Okay, so I sketched what I had on Desmos, as you can see here. And I'm gonna label three things. I'm gonna label my y-intercepts and my solution point. So I see that my solution is here, and that was -5, 6. I'm also gonna label my y-intercept, which was 0, 4. And my y-intercept for this line was 0, -4. All right, I also need to label my equations. So this red line was equation 1, and equation 2 was the blue line. And I can always double check that if we remember from our y-intercepts. So my y-intercept's +4, that's good. And my y-intercept is -4, that's good. All right, now we write our conclusion. So the solution is -5, 6, or x equals -5 and y equals 6. Remember, our solution has both an x and a y. All right, let's keep it moving. So here I have an equation. It is not isolated. I want to get y's on the left, everything else on my right. All right, so here we go. Here's my y, -y. I'm going to put a 1 there because an imaginary 1 lives next to it. In this side, I'm going to bring down my -7, and then I'm going to cross over the x term. So it was +x, so now it's going to become -x. I bring this down, and I bring this down, and I do not combine because they are not like terms. So this ends up as -7 minus 1x. Remember, imaginary 1. Okay, last step, divide, and we divide everything. That gets me y equals 7 plus, I divide this and I get 1, and I bring down my x. So my first equation is 7 plus 1x. All right, I need to do the same thing for equation 2. Y is going to go on the left, everything else over here. So what's my y term? I bring down 1y. I bring down my -1 on this side. And my 4x is going to cross over, so that's going to become -4x. I bring this down. y, and I bring this down. -1 minus 4x. And our last step, divide. What do we get when we do that? I get y equals I divide this, that gets me -1. I divide this, I get -4, and I bring down my x. So equation 2 is y equals -1 minus 4x. Go ahead and do step number 2. All right, so you should have gotten this for your slope and your y-intercepts. Just go ahead and check your answer. All right, now we're gonna pause and go to Desmos and plot my 2 equations. All right, here we go. Here is my graph. So I'm looking for 3 points. All right, and then I'm gonna go back and sketch that. Okay, so here is my sketch, and I'm just gonna go ahead and label my 3 points. So the first thing I'm going to label is my solution. I'm gonna label my y-intercept of equation 1, which is 7. And I'm gonna label my y-intercept of equation 2, which is 0, -1. Again, that should match my y-intercepts that I listed up here. So you'll see. Oh no, that was wrong. Good thing I just checked that out. Now it should match. Good. All right, our last thing we're gonna write is our solution conclusion. So the solution is -1.6, 5.4, or x equals and y equals. All right, now before we leave today, I just want to make sure to summarize what we learned. So before I graph, both equations need to be in y equals mx plus b form. When I isolate for y goes on the left and everything else goes on the right. The solution to a system is where the lines intersect, and it is written as x comma y. All right, guys, if you have any questions, type them in at the end of the video and make sure to complete today's classwork. See ya!